Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Carrie Moy, and I'll be leading this webinar today for you. Today's webinar is really about designing interactive math assignments in the assessment platform. So we're going to talk about our newest Assessments Builder that was released at the beginning of this year. What we're going to talk about is how do you use this builder to create your own problems in assessments where students can then get immediate feedback when they're working through assignments, and you get a rich data report that you can use to drive your instruction. So we're going to start off today by quick introductions. Like I said, my name is Carrie Moy. I'm the Director of Product and Program Operations here at Assessments. You'll recognize my name or my face if you have used any of our user guides or reached out to support. Our instructional videos are the ones that I sort of create. So really excited today to lead this webinar and teach you a little bit about this builder that we've released. I'm going to go ahead and let Dawn introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dawn Peterson, and I am a former assessments teacher, former webinar giver like Carrie today, and also now the product manager of both our builder, our problem builder, which Carrie's going to be showing you today, and also the student experience. So I'm here to monitor the chat and also to listen to you guys if you have any feedback on the builder or any questions that you might have as well.
So we're going to dive in today with the little Zoom etiquette here. So you, at the very bottom, you should see a window that says chat with like two little speech bubbles. We're going to use the Zoom chat today for questions or things like that. So just make sure you're staying on mute during today's session. It is kind of a small session, but we are recording this and will publicize this. So I just want to make sure that we're honoring everyone's privacy here with allowing you to be able to use the chat function, and then Dawn and I can read those questions out loud to share out. So like I said, we are recording today's session. If you have any questions about today's session, you can reach out to us at contact@assistments.org or use any of our user guides that we're talking about. But this presentation will include a slide deck as well as a recording to help you out throughout this presentation. All right. So today's session is really around our builder. So by the end of the session, you're going to know what our builder is. You're going to be able to create, modify, and publish math problems. And when I say interactive math problems, it's going to be allowing students to get that immediate feedback they're used to in assessments. If there's time, I'm going to give you a little bit to kind of try on your own in terms of creating an assignment, and we'll walk through a few of them together step by step that you'll be able to sort of follow along if you want, or if you want, just kind of watch what I'm doing. And then when you get the recording, you can try again on your own. And then just kind of thinking through like, what are some different ways you can use assessments in your classroom or in your daily instruction now that you have the ability to adapt problems and create your own. So we're going to kind of go over our introduction and goals, which I just did, talk a little bit about the Assessments Builder, actually dive in and build a problem set or problem, talk a little bit about how you modify. So if you're used to using our illustrative mathematics content and you want to maybe make it a little bit different for students in terms of differentiation, we're going to talk up through how to do that and the modifying and publishing. And then if there's time, a little hands-on exploration. Now there's a lot to cover and I want to make sure there's time for questions and answers. So we might not get through all of it today, but that way I can be able to answer your questions and point you to the resources that you need. All right, so on a scale from 1 to 5, I just want to know, in terms of who's in the room, how familiar are you with assessments itself, like as a platform? And then what are you excited to learn about today? I'm going to kind of give you some time to write that in the chat because I'd love to be able to make sure what we go over in terms of our builder experience is something that you are looking for if we are limited in time. All right. All right. So a lot of sort of new to assessments. So when we talk about the builder, I'm going to start with and focus a little bit more around the basics of our builder. I'll show you all the capabilities in terms of creating problems, but I'm not going to dive into the different complexities since it seems like a lot of you are new to assessments itself. So I will talk a little bit about what assessments is. We're not going to cover too much about assessments overall because this webinar is really about the builder. But at the end of this webinar, I'm going to point you to a webinar that's happening on Thursday. That one's actually going to be talking to teachers about ways that they use assessments in their classroom on a daily basis that you can listen to and ask them questions to sort of understand and help you think a little bit more about using assessments in your classroom. But since a lot of you are new, I'm going to kind of give you a general overview about what assessments is. But today's webinar is really focused around like, how do you use assessments to create problems in our platform? So that's kind of the general gist. And Dawn's going to put some additional resources in there for those of you who are just getting started, as well as a link to that webinar on Thursday, which I highly recommend just to kind of get you started. But assessments is essentially a free for Google Classroom and Canvas integrations where it is connected to a curriculum, or you can build your own, but basically students are given timely feedback, students are given immediate feedback as they are working, and you as a teacher get a rich data report that you can use to dive into instruction of what you want students to go over. So this is basically the general gist of the assessment cycle. You can find the content by browsing our content library. So looking through everything we have in our content library, you send it to your students, and then students are getting immediate feedback as they're going through the problem. So when they enter in an answer, they know if they're correct or incorrect. And we're going to talk a little bit about this when we talk about how we create problem sets or create our own problems. And then assessments does most of the scoring for you. And then you score any open response questions. Then you have a huge, rich data report that you can use to drive instructional needs. And then once you have that data, you can then find and assign content or create content, which is the purpose of today's webinar, to then help push that learning forward. So it just enters into this cycle. So like I said, today we're going to focus on our builder. So this is a tool that was released in the spring of 2025, which allows you to modify any existing content that is in our content library or build new problems from scratch. This includes building your own hints or explanations that you want students to have, and then essentially publishing it to then assign to students. So that's really where we're going to focus today in this webinar. But how you access the builder is by clicking when you're logged into assessments, this left-hand side where it says builder. I'm going to be using our new version of assessments, which you will see soon. So we already have this sort of ready, and you will see the new builder soon. It functions exactly the same. What we've changed is sort of the interface a little bit to make it easier for teachers to access their assignments and things like that. But for the purposes of today's webinar, I just want to use the new one so that you're used to it, but you can follow the exact same steps in the current version of assessments. Okay, I'm going to pause there for some questions around what content we're going to cover today. And hopefully that you're still able to follow along and are okay with what we're going to cover in today's webinar, even if you're new to assessments.
And we just had a new entry just a moment ago. So just as a recap, we are going over our content building space where you can customize or create your own problems from scratch. So yeah, just wanted to make sure that was said for the person who just came in.
Yes. So what I'm going to show today are the exact same steps in the current version as the new. So um, we can go over that, and then we will also talk a little bit about how when you create a problem, you can then tag it by standard so that when you get the assignment report, you're seeing the standards report as well. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into demonstrating this. At the end of this webinar, you are going to get this slide deck, which are going to break down a lot of different problems or a lot of different steps for creating problems in our content library. So types of problems that you can create. You can create an open response question. You can create multiple choice questions, multi-select questions where you can have one or more correct answers, questions where you have to order, drag and drop questions that are part of matching, and then any fill in the blank questions where students have to select from a drop down or have to actually type in text. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how to build, but we're going to talk about these different problem sets today. So the open response, which is this is how it looks like in assessments, a multiple choice where you can add images in as possible answer choices. So we're going to talk about like how to add in those images. Multi-select, where you'll be able to select more than one correct answer. So those are the boxes here, and we're going to talk a little bit how we can tell the difference. Ordering problems, so from least to greatest, and then you would rank them. Drag and drop, this is great for like matching types of problems or categorizing problems, and I'll show you both those examples. A drop down where this is an inequality question, so I can create a drop down where it's less than, equal, and greater than, and my students would then have to select which one is correct. And then a fill in text question where they actually have to type in a number answer. And with the fill in, I can actually have them like do it as a table here. So like input output, where I can bind them all into one. And we'll talk a little bit about variations in terms of like partial credit for these multi-box problems and things like that you'll able to do. We're going to come back to this slide as we dive in, since this is a lot of new users, and I want to focus on maybe creating the most simple versions of problems and then get to this part as we get a little bit later in the presentation. So I'm going to pause there because I do see a lot of questions coming in. Dawn, do you want to?
Oh yeah, I'm taking care of it. But one was someone was wondering if there's a certificate for completion for this webinar.
Yes, at the end of this webinar, you will get an email tomorrow saying that you attended this hour-long webinar.
Great. And then one of the attendees said that they've already created some of their custom assignments, and they're looking to dig a little bit deeper and get more information to share with their colleagues.
Oh, great. Awesome. So I'll definitely make sure I cover at the end how once you create a problem set, you can share it with your colleagues so that they can assign it as well. Okay, so elements of our builder. I'm going to pause here and just start with like step by step. But again, at the end of this webinar, you will get a slide deck along with this recording that kind of walks through some of these steps and these different points. But here is our builder. So I'm going to show you how to get there from our current version. That way you can see how it is exactly pretty much the same in our new version. So usually when you land in assessments, it looks like this. You'll notice on the left-hand side, we have something called a builder. When I click on builder, I can hit new, and this is where we're going to start today. We're new problem set. And this will allow me to name my problem set. And then now I'm in our builder. to be able to create problems. If I exit out of the builder and I'm like, oh, wait, I need to go back. What was I doing? I can open up my problem sets and you can see right here is the problem set that I just created, where I named it 10/21, 2025 webinar demo. And there's this orange symbol right here, which means that it's under construction, which means this is a problem that is unpublished right now. It's not ready to use. I am ready to, but I can click into it and start editing. So that's kind of how it looks in our current version. If I do the exact same in the version that you will see soon, I can just click Builder here. It brings me to the same place where then I click New Problem Set. I can name my problem set. And it brings me to the exact same spot. So this is the one I'm going to focus on. I have one started for today's session right here. So I'm going to delete the one I just made by hitting my triple dots and removing it. So that is removing my webinar demo one, but I'm going to go ahead and open up to the one that I have planned for today's session. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the different elements in our builder. There is a way for you to view what the problem set looks like. That's this first button. This button with the pencil icon is where we're going to focus today for really editing problems. And then there's always the ability to preview what this will look like for students before you're ready to actually send it to students. We'll talk about the different problem types. Those are the ones where I just talked about how you could have an open response question, multiple choice, multi-select. Those are all the problem types. Problem body is where I'm going to actually type my question or my problem. How I add a new problem, I hit this plus new button here to add a new problem, and then all my problems are showing it on the right-hand side for me as I go through. So how this looks in the platform. When I'm ready, so here's where I'm viewing all of them. This is just the problem set view. I can scroll down and see the problems that I've created for today's presentation. I'm going to hit new and select new problem. When I do, it adds my problem down at the bottom. Here's problem 10 that just got added, and it brought me to the problem editor view. This is where I'm allowed to jump around to start editing questions. Apologies if you hear that. All right, so I'm going to start with the problem type here. I'm editing and I'm clicking problem type here. And I'm going to choose an ungraded open response, right? Might be a problem that I just want to get to know my students, check in with them before a warm up. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask them a question, right? That would be the kind of open response. Here's where I could click student preview. I can actually preview the problem I am on or the entire problem set. In this case for today, I'm going to just show you the individual problem so that you can see. Here's the question. What's your favorite color and why? Right? Students would be able to type and then submit their answer for an open response. Problem 2, I'm going to show you the multiple choice here. So here's where I essentially could add an image if I wanted my image to be, for example, a cylinder or a circle. So this is that image where I can insert an image. When I choose my answers, I can also insert an image as my answer choice, or I can click math type, where this will allow me to then type in any math equations or things like that. Let me choose something similar, which is not a color in the rainbow. make that simpler for students and go pink. So in this case, I see these little circle dots. That's my also signal that this is a single select multiple choice question where there's only one correct answer. I'm going to save what I want as the correct answer. I can choose here where I can randomize the order for every student. So they're not going to see it red, pink, green, yellow. They're going to see it in that order. So I can kind of order it randomly. I can choose to keep it A, B, and C, or D. So that might be an option. Or if I want to, I can number the choices 1, 2, 3, and 4. In this case, for this type of answer, I'm going to go ahead and order it randomly. If I wanted to, I could add another color or another option, let's say blue here. And now I can go ahead and preview it as a student. Like I said, in assessments, students are getting immediate feedback. So here I could click red, submit my answer, not quite right, try again. And the option for red is now gone for students. So now I can go ahead and try another thing if I wanted, or get to the correct answer and then move on. So that's creating the multiple choice question as well as how some of that immediate feedback shows up in assessments. Same thing works for a multiple choice select all. In this case, there can be multiple correct answers. So you're going to notice the box here where I can essentially choose more than one correct answer when I type that in, and then that way it would provide the same immediate feedback for students if they only selected A and not the others. Okay, that was a lot of information.
Yep, just as a oh, no problem. Just as a refresher, because someone asked in the chat, so you can always access student preview by pressing that student preview or the eyeball button, as I like to refer it. So when you press that, you have the option to preview the entire problem set as a student, where you can navigate through and kind of look at exactly how they would see it, or just look at the individual problem that you're working on.
Okay. All right. As more information comes in, let me know in terms of questions. I'm going to dive into now creating an ordering problem. So in this case, I could say order from least to greatest. Oh, it's late, but essentially I'm just choosing ordering here. In this case, I would type in my numbers. I have the option for it to view vertically. So in this case for students, it would look like this, where now they have to rank from least to greatest. And as long as my answer choices were also from least to greatest, when I typed it in, this will be how it submits. So here in my answer key, I had least to greatest when I typed out. So then that's how in the problem, it does rank it as well. So if I were to flip those, that's where it says not quite right yet, try again. And then I would be able to sort of reorder to match what I had originally put in my answer boxes to submit the answer and then move on with that immediate feedback. So here that's vertical, but I can also choose horizontal. In that case, if I were to choose horizontal, I need to rearrange my numbers in how I want it to be ordered. So in this case, I might end up changing my order from least to greatest with greatest on the left, whatever that might be. That's obviously not how you would probably word this particular question, but in that case, then this would be the order I would want my students to put it in. Right.
Yeah, Carrie, and I'll just say one more time, because I've heard this is a little confusing when you're setting up the correct answer. If you go back to vertical, right here, this is the correct answer. So you're dragging them into the correct answer. But in the student experience, as it says up at the top in that light writing, it will automatically be randomized. So if you said it in the correct order, it will be randomized for students, so it's not given in the correct answer. So that happens automatically for you.
Yep, so this is the order I want, but when I preview it as a student, it's not in that order. Okay, great. I'm gonna now show supports because I did not talk about that, but wanted to add in a little bit more information about supports. So in assessments, we have things called student supports, which are hints or explanations to help drive students forward when it comes to theirs. We have that embedded in a lot of our content from our content library. If you're creating a problem from scratch, that will not be in there, but you can add it by toggling this on. So if you toggle that on here, you have the ability to add hints. So I might be hint number 1, hint number 2, and hint number 3. In that case, if I write my hints that I'm going to show you in student preview here, when students request a hint, they'll actually have the option to see the hint that I created for them for this particular problem. If there is no hint, so going back to problem 2 here, where I was asking which is not a color of a rainbow, there is no hint. So when they say get help, they only have the option to see the correct answer, which is another thing we have embedded where they can see the correct answer and then be able to move forward. You as the teacher will know based on this symbol in the assignment report or this color that that student needed to see the answer. All right, pause there for additional questions.
We had a great question about teachers wanting to use AI to help them create questions and whether users would be able to like upload those in. And currently we do not have an integration with AI where you can like create different problems and things. We're exploring that. Believe us, we are exploring different ways to integrate AI. But for now, at the very least, if you have an AI model that you like to create problems, you can use that and just copy and paste into the appropriate places that Carrie's showing you within the builder.
All right. I'm gonna now talk a little bit about drag and drop, as well as some of the like fill in the blanks, things like that. I'm trying to think where the easiest is to start. Drag and drop. So in a drag and drop problem, this is essentially how it will look for students, right? But I'm going to show you sort of how this needs to be built in order for that to happen. And what I need is what's called an answer box. So I type in my problem. Let's say this is the original problem that I have. And here's where I want my answer boxes. I'm not going to delete it here because then I'm going to like lose my answers. So I'm actually just going to build it down here below to kind of tell you what this looks like. So what I'm going to need is an answer box. I can insert an answer box by clicking this button here, right? Or I can use a shortcut by clicking the / key on my keyboard. And in this case, since it's a drag and drop problem, it's adding a drop location for me. What I mean by a drop location, it allows me to then click on one of my answer choices and drag it to that drop location. So that's essentially what I'm creating here. To make it a little bit more visual, I can create a table to then rearrange how I want it to look with my questions, right? And then I can add a drop box or drop location to each box that I then want to have an answer dragged into. With drag and drop, you have two options. This is an example of a single response, which means there's only going to be one of these squares in each of my drop box. So if I were to drop that in there, oops, I think I built this weird. So let me just remove these here. So here, that means that when I click and drag, only one thing can be in each of these boxes. Whereas if I choose multiple responses, I'll show you in my next question, this would be an example of a multiple response. In this case, I want multiple things, right, to be dragged in each box. So in this case, I want all of my trapezoids in one box and I want my non-trapezoids in another. This would be an example where I would use a multi-response drag and drop. When I'm ready to actually do my answers, so I create all my drop boxes. I then now can type in my answers that I want as options for students or option cards for students. So I might add an option here called inches. And then now inches appears as a card that I can then move somewhere else. So notice how when I change the volume of the fish tank to inches, cubic feet like no longer can be in that box because this is a single response answer type. I can choose for, since there are more than one answer boxes here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can choose partial credit. So if a student gets 1 out of the 5 correct, they get some partial credit. And then I can allow for duplicate responses, which means that yards could be in multiple ones if I wanted. So I can change that one to be both yards if I wanted. Or going back to, what was it? Square meters as the correct answer. So I'm going to preview this so that you can see this one particularly. So again, this is what it looks like. The answers are down at the bottom. If I wanted to say, okay, I know that one's square meters and I know this one is yards. No, that's not yards. I think I said.
No one's checking your math here. We're not math teachers.
Yeah. Here I do need to, before I can submit my answer, go ahead and make sure each box is filled. I chose to build it with partial credit. So when I submit it, here's what I mean. I get some feedback that those 2 are correct, but these ones are wrong. So then I can try again, or I can just click reset to empty those boxes for myself as a student. I'm gonna pause
Carrie,
there. I know
oh yeah. I'll just also add that if you go back into student preview for a sec, you have the ability in the builder as well if you want these answers to be duplicate. So you'll notice that like when Carrie dragged in square centimeters, like it was still in the answer bank so the student could use it again. So if you have more of like a one-to-one matching where each item in the column on the left only has one match, you can take off, or you could take off duplicate answers, and then the student won't have to like keep track of the answers that they already used, depending on the use case.
Yeah.
Also, the drag elements can be, you can use math type, like Carrie showed before on one of the multiple choice problems. You can also use images. So as a former middle school teacher, if I wanted to match, for example, an equation with a graph, you could insert images of graphs into the the answer choices, just like so, and then drag those and match it depending on what your needs are for a matching activity. Yeah, and you already had that one. So I'm just saying it again, Carrie, just to make sure it's up.
I appreciate it because I have not demoed this one yet. So I just wanted to show this one is a multiple response drag and drop. So how this one was built here is that it has multiple responses. I can then drag some different ones in here, and it does not have any duplicate responses because I can just drag all the ones that are trapezoids in there. If I'm feeling good with that, I can submit my answer. I know there was a question about standards, so I want to address that here so that you know how you can tag standards because I have it here. But essentially, in your problem, once you sort of have it, or even before you have it built, there's this little triple dot here that says edit standards. In this case here, you could find the particular standard that one matches in your opinion. So maybe it's, I don't actually know which one this was, but
Try polygons. I think it was polygons if you start searching by polygons.
Thank you. There it is.
And
Polygons.
yeah, and just in case you're going, and why? The account Carrie's using has New York standards. So the default for all of our accounts is Common Core. If you are a teacher in New York and you'd prefer New York standards to show, those will display. California, we're working on getting more state coverage for the states that do not use Common Core.
Yes, I forgot to change that. The furthest.
I was looking at that and going, why are those ones showing up first? That was weird.
My apologies, everyone, but I'm going to go back in. So again, this is the one I was working on. I was editing it. So I'm going to go ahead and go in there. And now if you notice that polygon problem, which I think was problem 6 here, now has the right standard associated with it that is not New York based. But yeah, that's essentially how I could tag each problem with a standard so that my assignment report shows that standards in the standards view of the assignment report. If you're not familiar with the assignment report, I highly recommend coming to our Thursday webinar, as well as checking out some of our user guides in the report section to talk a little bit more about our assignment report. Okay, pause there for any additional questions before I go into fill in.
Yeah, we had one question just about assigning of whether what control teachers have on the order that something is assigned in. So if they build a problem set, can they make sure, you know, students aren't sitting next to each other working on the same problem? That would be an assign time option. So if you're familiar with the regular assign time options, just assigning stuff from our content library, same thing. You can assign in student choice, which lets the student kind of pick and choose what to work on first. Random order, which will deliver them randomly as described and random. And then in linear order as well, if you want the students to be required to do them in the order that you assign. Yeah, and Chris said, woohoo. Well, he didn't say this exactly. I don't want to misrepresent. Woohoo, adding standards is a game changer for data collection. And absolutely, you are not required. Yeah, he did not say woohoo. I added that and I could feel his excitement. But it is not required for you as a kind of building your own problems to use the standard tagging. But if you do use the standards report, if you don't tag, that will be empty. And so you will have the problem level data, but not the standards level data. All right.
Awesome. I'm going to talk about fill in now. There's a lot of options for fill in and some nuance with the types of ones that you choose, but I'm going to start with fill in the blank here. If I were to type in when I add in my answer choice, so again, I'm hitting either this one to add an answer box, or I'm hitting my / key to add an in box. I have the option between a text input or a drop-down list. I'm going to start with the drop-down list. So here I chose a drop-down list. If I scroll down, you can see the drop-down list is pretty much similar to a multiple choice, right? You see these bubbles here, which means there's only one correct answer. I would type these in here as my options. And then when I preview it as a student, this is what a drop-down looks like, where students would then be able to select one option. What's nice about the fill-in and why I would choose it over a multiple choice could be if I wanted multiple drop boxes. So I might say for every apple, there is blank plums. Oops, I'm actually going to change that. There is answer box blank as my blank plums. So in this case, now I want students to fill up that answer. So here's my first drop down, right? Banana, apple, plum. And here's my second drop down where I can then choose the numbers. I might choose 9, 4, and 3. In this case, I only need 3 options. I do not need this fourth option. So I'm going to hit that little X next to it to go ahead and remove it. So now when I preview it, I now see my 2 options for a dropdown. I want plums here as the answer, and then I want my students to understand it's 3 plums there. So that can be kind of where I might choose a fill-in dropdown versus a multiple choice, because then I can actually add more questions into a single problem body. The other fill-in type is a text box. So in this case here, my question is how far around the whole track? I'm going to go ahead and hit my / key and choose a text input. In this case here, for my answer, I'm going to type in the correct answer. I don't actually know if that is correct, but that is what I'm going with. And I can choose an answer type. Here's where I'm going to go back to my slide deck here to talk a little bit about these different answer types that I can choose. So here's where it talks about building that problem, filling in with the actual response items in the problem body. And again, you can create math type, you can put images anywhere you want. And then the answer boxes, multiple step drag and drop. Okay. Oops, wait, where did it go? Let me get this out of the way. Oh, I know where it is. I need to go back. Okay. Here we go. To this one. So fill in problems. I can choose the answer type I would like. So depending on what I'm asking for, number means that I'm going to start with exact match. Exact match means that I have to type it in as a student exactly like that in order for me as a student to get it correct, right? So that's where exact match comes in.
I'll chime in real quick, Carrie, and just say I saw Megan smiling a little bit because we use exact match generally internally in assessments when we need to, when there's no other way to do something. But as you can imagine, if we're not being flexible with students, there's a lot of room for error and students can get frustrated. So some cases for exact match might be if you want students to give their answer in decimal form and it can't be fraction, it must be decimal, or you want them to write a quadratic equation in standard form and you don't want them to kind of mix up the terms in an equation or expression, something like that. But it does require student to enter it exactly how you put it in the answer field. So this hopefully should be a last resort or used very wisely.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And then number is the other one that is typically used, but this would be an example of let's say I don't mind if they put 0.25 instead of 1/4. So these are all equivalent to each other, and I'm okay with whichever one they write. I could use number in that case. Okay, this is where you had to help me with numeric expression.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Expression is like essentially, I was like, oh, you can take it, or I think I've got it, but.
Okay, go, Carrie.
Okay, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe numeric expression is like if I need them to sort of write an equation in simplified form, right? Oh, I knew algebraic expression. So you gave me an expanded form, right? I need to take a number and I need to write it in expanded form. In that case, like 525, I would need to write 500 plus 20 plus 5 to be correct. And in that case, a numeric expression would be the correct choice.
Correct. And another, basically something that requires an operator. Another example would be if you had to write the exponential form of 2 times 2 times 2. So the student would need to write 2 to the power of 3, which is a numeric expression. Okay, so you have to have a plus sign, a minus sign, multiply, divide, exponent, some kind of mathematical operator symbol in your answer. I find this isn't as commonly used because generally we want the students to get all the way down to kind of a numeric answer, but it's kind of a way to kind of dissect their work or show something in a different form.
And then algebraic expression tends to have some sort of algebraic symbol needed in there. So if you're combining like terms, this would be an example of like having the students write with an algebraic expression. So you will have reference to this document after this webinar along with this recording so you can refresh, but I'm going to go ahead and in this case want a numeric answer, right? Here, then I can preview my problem and you'll notice math type or our math keyboard is here. These are things that are not yet in the platform for students, but will be very soon, which is why I'm demoing him here now. So I don't know if you noticed, but we will have read aloud in our platform for students where
440 meters is 1/4 of the way around the racetrack. How far is it around the whole racetrack input box meter?
So it says input box meter, but in this case, this is where we would enter in that. So we have read aloud where the problems or any hints or explanations are being read. If students want the entire thing read, this is where they'll click for the whole page. They can hover over a specific problem if they'd like it to be read. And if there's any hints and explanations, that would also be read as well. And then you'll see when I hovered over this box, something new. We're introducing a math keyboard. So for example, that one that Don was talking about, if I needed to write an exponent, for those of you who may be familiar with ASSISTments, it used to be that you'd have to write the caret, but now you don't have to. I could just write that I want to do an exponent, type it in, hit my exponent, and then now it's looking like this instead of having to do the caret. So those are things that you'll notice. As a math keyboard, how I got that to show up is right here where it says show input keyboard. If I don't want that for my students, I can hit student preview. And then now when students click on that box, that keyboard is not showing up. We have a different keyboard for each grade level or grade band, essentially. So, and that depends on the standard. So if you are going to be creating, let's say a third grade standard problem, they don't need to see the infinity symbol that was on the other keyboard, right? Because that's not something students will be using in math class. So I'm going to add a standard, show input keyboard. And now when I preview my problem, there's less options here on the keyboard for students. So they're really focusing on maybe the symbols that they'll be using in this case. So submit my answer and I'm good. Move on. So again, here with fill in the blank, you can do the same thing as I was showing you with like the drop down where I can have multiple answer boxes. So in this case, answer 1, answer 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I can write in what I'd like as those options for students to then having to enter incorrectly here when they type it in. And so this one might be one where I would actually take off math keyboard because I know it is just numbers. So I can essentially remove that from the problem if I find it distracting for my students. So then when they go through, now that's not there to bother them. All right. All right. I'm gonna pause there for questions about creating fill-in problems. Oh, that one's for you. That last message about the addition of the math keyboard.
Yeah, one thing we're working on is adding different tools in the student experience so that the tools that are seen on a lot of end of year assessments are also present in the student experience so they can practice with these tools and be ready for summative tests. So this is the first one, so glad you like it.
Yeah, and it's not out yet, but it will be soon. So make sure you are following us on social media. We have a Facebook community of teachers or our email list so that you're notified right away. I think there was an email that went out today that was saying, hey, if you'd like to be notified of when this comes out, make sure you're on the list. So I'm going to quickly show you two more things just because we're running low on time. So here I can actually create a multi-part problem. So when I say new problem here, it's created at the bottom and it's part A. When I scroll up here, here's part A. I can add a part. There's part B and then part C. And you can see down here, I can flip between creating my problem for part A, part B, part C, but problem 10 is here with those three different parts. So that's essentially how you could create a multi-part problem if you, for example, wanted part B to be associated with part A instead of an individual problem. Now, I want to quickly go over how you can adapt what is in our content library. So let's say I'm assigning this problem set, and I decide I want to change the names of this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose which problems in that problem set I want to assign to my students. I can't see the problems just right now. Oops, not able to see my screen. How about now?
We can still see your screen over here,
Okay,
Carrie.
awesome. So here, I want to edit these problems. I'm going to go ahead and select a handful of them that I want to edit. These have multiple parts here. So I'm going to go ahead and select them. And I'm going to click Assign. Now, instead of actually assigning to my class, which I typically do, I'm going to go ahead and hit Add to Problem Set. In this case, I'm going to name my problem set. Don, will you go ahead and link to our builder resources in our content library? Because there is a video on what I'm showing right now that she can refer back to later. So I'm going to go ahead and create a problem set here, and I'm going to go view in my problem sets. If I need to find it later, it's builder, my problem sets. Here's the one I just created. And now that I'm here, I can click problem editor. Here's problem one with the different parts. Right now it's read only because it's from our content library. And so because it's from our content library, I can't edit it. So I'm going to go ahead and click this triple dot and I'm going to choose to edit problem one. When I click edit problem one, it's going to say, hey, this will change the problem set and it won't be live until you publish it. I'm totally fine with that. I'm going to hit proceed. Now that read only is gone and I have the ability to edit where I can change the names to people in my class if I'd like. Okay, so then in that case, I've changed it. For example, problem two is still read only. I can't change anything, no matter how much I try. I need to hit that triple dot and choose to edit the problem. Once I've done that, read only disappears and I will be able to edit it, including maybe changing the standard for it if I feel like it's a different standard, changing the names, changing the numbers, whatever it is I choose. I just want to make sure I change all aspects of it. But that's essentially how you can change from our content library. The last thing I want to quickly show, and I'll kind of go through our different resources in the slide deck that you're going to get. But the last thing I want to show is that you can then create these problem sets, move them into a folder, and share that folder with your colleague. When you share it with your colleague, they will see it in their shared with me folder and be able to assign from it. So if you are essentially creating a bunch of different problem sets that you want to then share with your colleagues, you can use this resource. All right, I'm going to walk you through a couple of things right now. If you go to our website at ASSISTments.org, under resources for community, user guide here is where you're going to click. And under customizing assignments, here's where you can create a customized assignment, mix and matching from our content library. Or right here is all of our builder resources that I went over today. So that's where you're going to be able to find things, including videos on essentially modifying from our content library. In the slide deck you will receive, there's also a breakdown of how to do this, right? There's no answer set up for the open response, how you might need to set up your different answers when it comes to drag and drop problems and things like that. So it's very thorough with some information on what you can do with building, as well as how you can adapt from our content library, where I was able to show you like how you might change the name and click that edit button. So here, clicking the edit problem, and then in this case, be able to change it. If you run into any issues, you are going to get an error message. So I'm going to show you what this looks like, particularly when you're ready to publish. So here, I'm going to show you really quickly. Here, if I were to click publish, my problem set here, it's going to fail. And I have a couple of errors. Right now I can see these are the two problems with errors. When I click into it here, it'll tell me, okay, student response feedback, I have no value. So I go here, student response feedback. Oh yeah, I didn't put a number here. So I'm gonna go ahead and make that change. And then problem 2 is obviously empty. So I'm gonna go ahead and click that triple dot and remove it. Now I'm going to go ahead and try and publish my problem again, and there's no error messages. So now it's successfully published, and right here you'll notice assign problem set. I can click on that and I can assign it to my class now. I will probably change the name of this assignment, but I will assign it to my class how you typically would assign the assignment. And here's where you have the choice for order: random order, linear, or student choice.
Carrie, can I just note one more thing if you go back to the builder? Some people like start freaking out because they don't see a save button anywhere. I just want to note that we do automatically save. So if you go back to problem editor view, Carrie, so if you make an edit to the problem body here, you'll notice a little black bar that shows up at the bottom of the screen. When you click out and kind of into the white space or anywhere outside of that box, you do get that save changes. So things are saving just like they do in like Google Docs and stuff like that. So you do not need to save. You just need to republish to make sure that your students are seeing the updates that you've made to a problem or problem set.
Yeah, essentially this symbol also lets you know that you've made a change to that problem and it is unpublished. So you want to then go ahead and publish it, and notice how now that symbol is no longer there because the edit I made has been published. Okay, so that's kind of the error messages. Also as a resource, if you run into any trouble, how you might be able to reach out to us at contact@assistments.org with your problem set ID, where we can then help you. It's at the very bottom of our user guides here, so that you can follow along. If you run into any trouble, under publishing and assigning down here, talks about what you can do if you try and just don't know how to read the error message or aren't sure. You can send us an email at contact@assistments.org with that ID number, and we'll be able to help you out. Okay, ooh, we are right at time. So again, you will get the slide deck along with the video recording. I talked a little bit about how you can share, but there is a user guide resources on sharing folders with your colleagues, which I will put in the chat, or Dawn can, she might be quicker at it. But finally, we have a webinar on Thursday night where you can register, same as how you registered for this webinar. That spotlights how teachers use assessments in their classroom. So these are from real assessments teachers. And yeah, I'm going to have you do 1 minute of feedback here if you've got some time. But again, I pointed out to where our user guides are, so that you're able to access them. With any questions you might have, you can reach out to contact@assistments.org. And if it will let me zoom annotation, have you take a quick survey for me. Just letting us know about this webinar. I know it was a lot of information, but hopefully gave you enough to get started in creating your first couple assignments and assessments, or building your own assignments and assessments. And Don and I will stay on for a few minutes if any of you will have additional questions.